Back when I was a junior in high school, this guy transferred in from out of state who developed a serious obsession with me. It started out kind of harmless at first. He would try talking to me, but only ever about the weirdest stuff. Like if he'd been all sweet about asking me out, I definitely would have felt guilty turning him down, but because he was so obnoxious, I had zero qualms with telling him to get lost. A good example would be the first time I rejected him. Most guys might just take it in their stride, maybe think I was playing hard to get, but this kid heard my no and immediately just punched a locker right next to me. The sound of it had me jumping out of my skin, and the few doubts I had about rejecting him completely evaporated the moment he acted out like that. He didn't just punch the locker either, because he caused such a scene, he literally ran away from the lockers at full speed. It was seriously the most embarrassing and terrifying thing that had ever happened to me at that point. Well, at the hands of another human being anyway. He did seem to take a few steps back following this little outburst, but he soon redoubled his efforts, joining every after-school club I was a member of. When they were done, he'd follow me home at a distance. One time my dad caught him doing it and chased him up the street after that. It became this huge family issue. I just found the whole thing thoroughly mortifying, I guess because I just didn't get how serious it was. It was annoying, kind of scary even, but I didn't think he had what it took to actually hurt me. But as it turned out, that wasn't really the issue. After a few months of my turning down dates, he told me if I didn't want to go out with him, that he would take his own life. I still said no. I found stuff like that sort of emotional blackmail, to be frankly disgusting, and instead of having its intended effect to garner my sympathy, I hated this kid more than ever. The whole feeling was grounded in the idea that he just wouldn't do anything, that he didn't have the guts, the balls. He was all empty threats and grand theatrical displays, or so I thought. The next few days, he was missing from school. Rumors were around that he actually did take his own life, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't freak me out think he actually had gone through and done it. I mean, that'd be something that'd stay with me for the rest of my life. A kid told me he'd end himself if I didn't date him. I didn't, so he did. But God, if I didn't feel like punching him in the face as soon as he showed up again, I figured he'd just skip school for a few days to scare me a little bit. Mission accomplished. And this confirmed that he didn't have the balls to do it. He was wearing bandages when he showed up again and actually cornered me at lunch to say, "You made me do this." I just ignored him. I didn't want to actually ask to see the cuts, but a part of me is still so effing sure that they were covering up nothing at all. But the next big incident was at the end of our senior year. After a club meeting, I stayed behind to help clean up. My friend had stepped out to go grab something from their lockers, so I didn't see my stalker walk back into the room. He must have just saw his opportunity, came up behind me, and grabbed my chest. I don't remember what he said, but I was so freaked out that I actually squealed. That's the point I got the cops involved. As the room's security camera captured the whole thing, the whole ordeal ended up in court. He got a conviction, and I think his handsiness actually cost him his place at his preferred college too. It was a little piece of revenge that I cherished, but it turned out it just gave him a whole bunch of free time that he could use to stalk me. I became absolutely paranoid with him hanging around my college campus, and by that stage he was exhibiting every possible behavior of a controlling, manipulative sociopath. I just remember being terrified that he'd eventually try something worse. I finally transferred schools, and about a year later, I started getting emails from him, most of which were apologies for how mean he was to me and asking if I forgave him. But the emails quickly turned into him begging for my Facebook info. I had him blocked on Facebook since high school, and I absolutely didn't want him to know where I was going to school, so I ended up blocking him on my email too. Since then, I've not heard from him again, and I have also moved across the country for another reason entirely. But the move honestly brought me a lot of relief that I wouldn't accidentally run into him sometime, and the whole cycle might start again.
I'm going to take you back a few years to when I was working at McDonald's. For context at the time, I was a 16-year-old female. Now at the McDonald's I worked at, when you are on headset, you answer people at the drive-thru. You are normally required to be at the first window to also take payment. My job position was customer care manager at the time, so my job was to be on the front desk, but 99% of the time, they required me to be behind tills. So I was having a normal day, working a long shift, but having a normal work day. I happened to be on headset, and first window that day too. My headset buzzes, letting me know there's someone at my drive-thru lane. I go through to the first window to answer my customer, and this is how the conversation ensued. "Hello, welcome to McDonald's, what can I get you?" "Oh wow, you got a beautiful voice." His voice was grunty and husky sounding, not off-putting. We have all sorts of customers come through McDonald's every day, so it didn't give me the creeps or anything. "Thank you, sir, how very flattering. What can I get you?" "I haven't decided yet." There's a long pause here. "Can I come to the first window to decide? I want to see who I'm talking to." Now we weren't very busy at this point. The creeper hadn't actually creeped me out. I mean, all he'd done was pay me a compliment, and we quite often had people complaining that they preferred face-to-face contact, so this certainly wasn't out of the blue or unusual. "Yeah, sure sir, that's fine." "Wow, you're as beautiful as you sound." "Thank you sir, have you decided what you're going to order?" "Are you an option?" I laughed nervously at this. It was my first job, and I wasn't the rude kind of person where someone was paying me a compliment. I must also point out this guy must have been in at least his 60s. I remember he had one lazy eye that looked to the left, painfully awful teeth, and patchy dark brown hair. At this point, I was a little bit uncomfortable, but was still more than willing to take his order. "I'll have a cheeseburger." "Okay sir, that'll be 99p. Are you paying cash or card?" Without answering my question, he started asking me where I'm from, how old I was, etc. But it wasn't until his last question that I got super weirded out. "What time do you finish work?" 7:30, why? I didn't actually finish at 7:30, but 7:30 was the first number that came into my head when I blurted it out. I finished at 8 and would probably do some overtime too, but I wasn't about to let him know that. "I can meet you if you want. I can pick you up outside and we can go somewhere." All the while he's saying this, he has this horrendous grin on his face and keeps winking at me. "I'm really sorry, sir. I'm not allowed to meet customers outside of work. It's against employee policy." This was utter bull, but I needed him to leave me alone, and he carries on being insistent but not getting the picture, and I cut the conversation short. "Anyway, sir, sorry to be rude, but can I have the 99p for your cheeseburger?" "Ah, yes, sorry. See you at 7:30. Off he drove to the next window and I was gobsmacked. I'd already said I wasn't going to see him. I was a little bit shocked, but was not going over there to give him the satisfaction of talking to me again. My coworker came to me and said, "Ew, that guy had a major crush on you. I wanted your number, but I didn't give it to him. He's old enough to be your dad, if not older." Anyway, I explained exactly what happened and how uncomfortable it made me. 7:30 came around and my coworker spooked. The creeper was actually waiting in the car park for me, just like he said he would. He sat halfway down the car park and you could see him just staring in. Our car park wasn't very big. It only had 4 rows of parking spaces, so he wasn't that far away and would have clocked me the minute I walked out the door. At this point, I'm freaking out and head to the back of the store where hopefully he can't see me. I had to stay in the back of the store for 40 minutes before we knew it was safe to come out. Fast forward a week and Creeper is back on drive-thru, and guess who's back on headset at window 1? Me. I heard his voice and recognized it straight away. "I was hoping I'd hear your voice again. Why didn't you meet me the other day?" 1 second, sir. I'll be with you in 1 second. I immediately handed my headset to my manager and gave him a quick briefing of the situation. He gladly took the headset and dealt with the customer from start to finish. When my manager came back to me to let me know he'd gone, he said the creeper had been asking my name, my address, and my surname. My manager said he was the most creepiest guy he'd ever met, and I was never to have anything to do with him again. If he came back to work while I was there afterwards, my manager would have to head me to the back room while he dealt with him. He still asked about me every time. So to the creepy McDonald's guy, let's never meet again.
I have been helping deliver newspapers since my dad started as a carrier when I was 6. Eventually, my dad was given his own distribution center, so when I turned 16 and got my license, I started doing them on my own. Most of the people in the depot have been there for years. They've watched me grow up, and I consider many of them an extended part of my family. We spent every holiday together. The newspaper never had a day off. Countless birthdays. But there was one guy who always gave me the major creeps. I was about 14 when he started, I think. I used to hang out in the back office with some of my other friends as the years went on, and he always hung out back there because he was also friends with these people. At least that's what I thought. One of them recently told me they only tolerated him. I never spoke to him because something just felt really off about the guy, but nothing happened until last year. I moved home following my graduation from college. I was already having a hard time readjusting because I no longer had any friends in the area and I was missing my college town. Creepy guy that I'll just call B started hanging around me a lot. He had a weird man crush on my dad too, always buying him extra gifts for birthdays and holidays, sucking up majorly. I did my usual nice greeting, keep to myself stuff. But then he started buying me gifts for no reason. My mom told me to just keep them because it was all stuff I liked, Marvel and cat-themed things. That was probably my first mistake. He started acting like we were BFFs and coming out to find me while I was sitting in my car and talking about how I deserve so much more than being trapped here at the depot and that he will do whatever it takes to get me out of here because he really cared about me and I deserve so much more. I never really acknowledged it because I thought it was really weird, and I thought if I just kind of nodded quickly he'd go away. This went on for weeks. Then he started texting me, telling me to sleep well after work and just being generally really creepy. I should probably mention I was 22 at the time and this guy is well into his 40s. I started avoiding him and he kept leaving things on my bench. I came in one day and there were cat posters taped along the back of my bench. I kept taking them down, but they'd be back up the next day. When I started avoiding him, he made a Facebook group chat with me and my dad complaining about every little thing and just being a major jerk. He made a really rude remark about my friend who was visiting from Germany, so I blocked him on Facebook because I wasn't going to deal with it anymore. B made a new Facebook and remade the group chat just to keep doing it. I went away for a while on a vacation to visit my childhood friend in Washington, and when I got back, he was calling me by my full name, which I absolutely hate. I was tired and jet-lagged, so I went off on him, and he whipped around and blew up 3 times worse, telling me I was all these terrible names, and I thought I was so perfect because I was the boss's daughter, and there was no one there as perfect as him. My jet-lagged brain broke down after he walked away. I'm glad I held on till he left, but I stormed out to my car and told all my guy friends to keep him as far away from me as possible because I was so fed up. He started texting my brothers, asking if they were on his side and if they had his back over mine. My roommate, who was a guy, started getting threatening texts from him about wanting to fight over me. Everything was spiraling out of control. My dad made us sit down at the local Denny's one morning to work everything out because he was so sick of B blowing up his phone. When my dad was there, things were fine. B said he wasn't mad at me, but I was just the catalyst the day of the fight and whatever. My dad left to pay the bill, and suddenly B's attitude changed. I was in the wrong, and treated him terribly, and all he ever did was love me, and I treated him so poorly. He kept trying to hold my hands over the table, telling me he loved me over and over. I put on a polite show because I just wanted this to end, and thought if I was nice about it, things would be different. Apparently my answer to everything is be nice and it'll go away. He walked me to my car after the conversation at Denny's and asked if I noticed anything different. I told him no, and he got agitated. Apparently, he spent a lot of money on Captain America clothing, everything from a hat to shoes. I told him I didn't notice clothing like ever, and B got increasingly angry, telling me he did it to feel better about himself and impress me. Cap is my favorite superhero. I didn't even know he knew that. He had left the depot for a while, and when he asked to come back, I told my dad's manager I knew we were desperate, and I would be okay if I didn't have to talk to him. I wore headphones every day, my music full blast so I couldn't hear anything over them. He kept coming to my bench and would stand there waiting for me to acknowledge him, and he'd storm off angry when I didn't. He would glare at me if I ever talked to any other carrier, even though I'd been friends with many of them for years. My tipping point was something I found out after the fact. My guy roommate had gone to the grocery store late one Sunday. When he was walking to his car, he noticed some guy watching him. The guy watched him as he loaded the car and smoked a cigarette, and that's when my roommate realized it was B. My roommate got in his car and started driving home, and he noticed B was following him. He tried taking several wrong turns, and every time B followed. My roommate called his friend and said he was coming over, and when he said so, to open the garage to make it look like he lived there. When my roommate met his friend in the house, he told him everything, and they watched him drive by the house 8 times before leaving. No one called the police. I feel like that was the only thing that justified calling the police, because the harassment and stuff couldn't justify police action. I knew that from years of watching crime shows, and I was angry when I found out that no one called. I told my dad I wanted him gone. I couldn't take it anymore. Texts are easy to avoid, but now he was stalking us to try and figure out where I lived, since I wasn't living at home but renting a house with my brother and our friend. I spent months watching over my shoulder whenever I went to the store, worried he'd follow me home. After, he started going to my parents' house a lot because he knew where they lived, like he was waiting for me to be there one day. No one was taking this seriously. The gifts continued, and my mom kept telling me it was free stuff and to just keep it. But the gifts always came after something bad, and it was feeling oddly like an abusive relationship. Oh no, you're angry? Here's a gift to make you forget and like me again. My mom felt that way till her birthday, and a giant bouquet of roses and a teddy bear appeared at her job from B. We didn't even know he knew where she worked. After that, he started cornering me in the parking lot. I told him he'd been told to stay away from me, and I'd appreciate it if he listened. Look, he said, I'm sorry I took you for granted. I never should have done that. Are we okay now? I was floored. I told him if he thought that's why I was avoiding him, he was more insane than I thought. After that, he was done at the depot, and I didn't see him for a while. A couple times I definitely saw him driving around on my route, but I couldn't prove it to a cop if I called it in. The last time I saw him, I was at my second job. I worked in a music store at a local mall. I was messing around with my coworkers when I turned around and saw him watching me from our hip-hop section. My stomach dropped. I almost collapsed and I started panicking. I ran him back and told my coworkers. They agreed if he asked, they didn't know who I was, and I could stay in the back till he left. I was a manager, but I didn't think I could actually kick him out because he was just watching me. My coworkers said he was there for almost 2 hours just wandering around. Never bought anything. It was like he was trying to wait me out, figuring I had to go back out front eventually. He texts my dad now and then, trying to get his job back and fix things. My mom told him if he ever came near us again, she'd call the cops. When my dad wouldn't take him back, he started showing up at my uncle's depot and then started a group chat with him and my dad, saying they needed to sit down and talk. I was with my dad when my uncle called him about it. My dad called everything a misunderstanding. I said I didn't classify stalking as a misunderstanding. That day he came to my other job, I decided I was moving back to my college town 3 hours away. Home no longer felt like home. I didn't feel safe going anywhere. I still worry one day he's just going to show up in my new city. I transferred to the music store there. I had worked with these people my senior year of college, and they have looked out for me even after I moved. They all know the story, and I know they would all fight for me if it came down to it, so I feel safe, but I still panic when we walk to our cars after dark and have to check the parking lot to make sure he isn't there. It's been almost a year, and all I can say is I hope I never see him again.